Hi Jake, this is Fancy. In addition to the comments I made in the previous post, I'm going to try to explain some of it in the context of this video. So as I was saying, your piece is kind of similar to those sculptures that I worked on when I took a little short Studio Arts workshop when I was a little bit younger than you. And so you have 4 sides in the top, and you want each side to be unified, but you also want it to be a little different. So if somebody's looking at your very cool subwoofer, each side is a little different. There's a little bit of a different surprise or something unexpected as they look at all 4 or all 6 sides of this. The first thing I think you should do in order to make this happen is to kind of shift this grid a little bit more. So this side here and this side here are different because this point of emphasis is off center of the top. So on this side you get mostly these oranges and these pinks or purples, and on this side you get mostly the orange and the purples, but you also start to get some of the green and blues. So that makes it different. These 2 sides are different. These 2 sides on the left and the right are essentially very similar, however, in the position of the grid and the amount of color. There's about the same amount of blues and greens here and here, here and here, and the same amount of purples and oranges here and here. So that's something to consider, maybe shifting the grid a little bit more to the right or left. So that would make each side essentially a little bit different, but they would remain unified. One thing that was mentioned in the course of the final project videos, and maybe even within the assignment sheet for the final project, was if you're using multiple colors or multiple hues that you're using, such as you're using, you need to choose one that's more dominant than the others. So, maybe right now you don't really have a dominant hue. So you might think about that, or maybe 2 dominant hues versus 2 subordinate hues. But picking a dominant hue and then making everything more of an accent or a subordinate hue. That may be something that you want to think about. Also, you want to make sure that the grid is the same width all the way around. So I would make it the same width. These are a little bit thinner, this is a little bit thicker. You have some lovely gradations going on. I like that they're not gradating across pathways. I don't mind it here, I guess. And you might think about, if it's gradating across pathways here, do you want to set up, some gradation of across pathways here that maybe fade into more of kind of a watery mix, or go from orange hue to the purple hue. Linda has explained that if you're not working with a chroma bridge, which results in chromatic grays, then you're working with kind of a hue bridge, so a color bridge. So it's not necessary to work with perceptual opposites. Perceptual opposites give you chromatic grays and hue bridges. Excuse me, do not necessarily do that. Also, I think you should probably just start out by making your grid pretty solid, without these interruptions for now. So make it a nice clean grid with nice clean edges. Make sure your gradations are moving smoothly from one hue to another. And then the last thing I would do is decide where these little parts, little interruptions come in. I would do that the very last, after everything else is organized everything is gradating smoothly, etc. Now you have some gradation across pathways here, but here all the other gradations are kind of more organic. So, you need to think about how you're going to unify this. Are you going to include more of this kind of gradation, or are you going to create a combination? Maybe these, you set them up as gradations within pathways. I can kind of see where these could be easily made into pathways and then kind of let those pathways dissolve into something, into a gradation that's more organic in nature. I could see that happening. For this, it's kind of the same all the way around. It starts out pretty solid and then it breaks up. I might kind of nudge this into a corner. So I might nudge the hub into a corner right next to the orange, and then again gradate it across pathways, but then quickly let it dissolve into a more organic gradation, such as you have in here. So I think these are working really well. These are working really well. These are a little bit kind of choppier, I think. This one's probably the best of the bunch, but making sure it moves a little bit more smoothly like this one. This one you can see some kind of harder boundaries, kind of break up. This one is pretty good, but I see some kind of hard edges right in this area. So you need to think about that. Once you have your gradations really nicely smooth, you think about whether you have a dominant color versus subordinate colors. Your grid is gradating well. The areas between your grid are gradating well. Then, like I said, the last thing I would do is go back and strategically add some of these triangular pieces within the pathway, or let the pathway interrupt some of the areas between the grid. I wouldn't have too many of them, but then I would strategically kind of scatter them around so that they create some more visual interest. So let's start with that. You're really getting closer. It's getting better with each and every iteration.